If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And please join me on my website at nanice.com. Thank you.
It's your time for Chai with Nanice. Get ready for substance, clarity, change, and especially empowerment. Get ready to turn over stones, uncover stories, and get to the heart of the matter in every area of your life. Any mood runs, any emotion flies, and your dreams are within your grasp. There are no limits or boundaries, and your comfort zone is out of reach, yet it's the safest place you will ever be. Come in, sit down, and have some chai with Nanice.
Today's show is very near and dear to my heart. It's a show about forgiveness and reconnection with yourself and with others. For many years, more than a decade or more, I've been coaching, mentoring, guiding people from all over the world. And almost without exception, each one of them had some sort of unresolved issue with a mother or a father. And these issues played out in their adult lives in ways that were sometimes obvious and sometimes so insidious and so under the surface that they could not even identify them. Today's show is about that relationship that may need healing with your mom. And the reason that I decided to focus on that particular aspect of healing today is due to an epiphany that I recently had about my own mother and about my own relationship with my mother. So for many years, so let's say I'm 46 years old, so for 40-something years, my mother and I did not have the best of relationships. As a child, I found her to be extremely controlling and, wanting to know my every move. And, as a result, I became a very rebellious child and a very rebellious teenager, which only furthered the dynamic of control and me trying to get out of that control. So I had decided in my mind that, my mother really didn't have my best interest at heart. And by the time I was 16, I actually ran away from home because I wanted my freedom. And she forbid me to, date a boy that I was seeing. And I ended up running away from home, moving in with him. He became abusive. And there's a whole amazing story there that I may share today or some other time. My mother, in her feeling out of control, shall we say, did everything she could to get me back home, including sign papers to commit me to a mental hospital. After that, I really believed that my mother was my worst enemy. And not only did I have to protect myself from my abusive boyfriend, but I also had to protect myself from my controlling mother. Well, the relationship ended, and a little bit of time went on, and by the time I was 17, I was back living at home, just counting the days till I could get out from underneath the control of my mom. And I found out that I was pregnant. And in that time, my mother and I, we actually reconnected. There was something about my being pregnant that made her heart soften towards me and my heart soften towards her. But we never spoke of what had happened the year before. We never spoke about all the things that she perceived that I did to her, and many of them I did do, and all the things that I perceived that she did to me. Well, the years went on, and we were definitely connected because now I had a child, her grandchild, and years later had 2 more children. And we even ran a business together for many years back in New York. But still, my mother knew how to press all my buttons. I had to work 24 hours a day just to remain civil to my mom. And I hate to admit it, I failed at that very, very, very often. Years ago, it occurred to me that I really only had one thing to do in my life, and that was try to figure out how to get along with my mom. And by then, I really had no idea what that looked like because my efforts never worked out very well. No matter how much I tried, no matter how much I was on my best behavior, sooner or later I would fail, often sooner rather than later. And we would just end up fighting and bickering and just at complete odds. Well, about a year ago, my then 13-year-old son Travis taught me quite a lesson. And the lesson was this. He had his first girlfriend, and she was less to him. Well, one day we were having a conversation about that, and I was giving him all sorts of advice, how he can set boundaries and let her know that it's not okay to disrespect him, and teach her how to, speak with him. And I went on, and this was on the way driving him to school. Well, at some point I realized that he wasn't verbally responding, but I knew he was listening. I could tell. So I looked over at him, and he was smiling, and at that moment I realized, and I said to him, Travis, you don't really care. And he laughed, and he said, Mom, why should I care how she treats me? That has nothing to do with me. That's all about her. I want her to be who she is. And if I don't like it, I have the choice to leave or do something about it. But I certainly don't have to change her. And in that moment, a little light went off in my head. Speaking about his girlfriend, he was Mom. He's pretty wise. I don't know if he knew he was talking about that then, but later on he sure did figure that out. Well, I made a different decision. And in fact, I said, love you and I want a relationship with you. And that might mean that, we don't get along or we fight. And, I'm okay with that because I just want to have a relationship with you. Basically said the same thing. Just about a month or so later. And that is, suddenly I really did start accepting my mother. Suddenly I stopped telling a story about why she acted a certain way. Suddenly I saw the humor in some of the things that used to drive me crazy. Now, I do have to mention in my defense that my mother is considered a very, very challenging person to have a relationship with. Well, once I made this decision and once I started really accepting her and not just wanting her to be a certain way so I could accept her, everything changed. And months and months and months went. And as these months went by, our relationship just kept improving and getting better. And I truly believed that, we met halfway, and not only did I change, but she changed too. Well, in April, I went to Peru and came back after a couple of weeks, and I was pretty bit shattered and distraught. I was pretty much not really myself. When I came home, she was at my house because she lives at my house part-time. And immediately, within a few hours of my returning, we ended up getting into a big fight. And I went into a story in my head, well, see, she really didn't change. And my son, my 28-year-old son, quickly pointed out that she never did change, that it was just me. It was just me that had changed. Well, at first that was shocking, but then I started about it, and I started really looking, and then I realized that that was true, simply by allowing her to be who she is at any given moment and accepting her without trying to change her or making a story out of anything she tries to say or making it about me. Without doing those things, suddenly she did change, but not because but simply she was responding to me in a different way. Well, once I realized, I went to her and I said, Mom, I'm sorry. I just was having a really hard time, and I know that's no excuse, but forgive me, and can we get back on track? She said she was sorry too, which that's not something that she normally does, and was validated to the truth discovered. Amazing. I actually miss her when she's not here. I had an epiphany. Not exactly led up to it. I believe I was mothers and daughters and relationships. Thinking about my sons as well. And I started thinking about how much I love my sons. Oh my goodness. And I have a grandbaby on the way, and how much I love my grandbaby, and how much I love my daughter-in-law, and how much I love all of them. And in that moment, I got it. That as much as I love my children, much my mother loves me. And once that deep inside the cells of my being, I also realized that everything that she's ever done in her entire life in relationship to me was out of that love. And that if she did things that I perceived were hurtful or not in my best interest, it's just that she loved me so much she didn't know what else to do. And just because she had made mistakes or she was mistaken in the things that she might have said or done, that doesn't mean that she didn't love me. That doesn't mean that she didn't want the best for me. And when I finally understood that her entire life has been dedicated to her love for me, and all she's ever wanted was to keep me safe and to keep me healthy and to have me have a happy life, a rush of forgiveness spread over me. But it wasn't just forgiveness for her. No, not at all. It was forgiveness for me. Because, you see, I was the one who was mistaken. I was the one who had misperceptions. I was the one who was wrong. Soon after that epiphany, I went to my mother with tears rolling down my face. And I told her, I said, I get it. I can feel how much you love me. I can feel it. I know that everything you've ever done is out of love for me. And she wrapped her arms around me, my cute little 83, almost 84-year-old mother. Don't tell her I told you that. Wrapped her arms around me, patted me on the back, and she said, shh, shh, it's okay, it's okay. As if to confirm everything I had already realized. Now, your relationship with your mother may resonate with my story, or it may be a little different or a lot different. But if there's any kind of turbulence, friction, discomfort, or anything that's not in alignment between you and your mother, please open up your heart, open up your mind, and maybe see a higher truth. Because I will tell you, our ability to create happy lives is absolutely dependent on our relationships with the people that mean the most to us. Now, if you have a wonderful relationship with your mother, think about other relationships that you might want to heal. And that could be between siblings or spouses or your dad or your children or friends. When it comes right down to it, it's all the same. Today, joining me in this conversation is my beautiful daughter-in-law, April Kritzer. And for many of you who have listened to the show over the last few months, you've heard her talk many times about the relationship with her mother and the abuse that she went through and her healing process along the way. She's in a very interesting position right now because in less than 2 months she's due to have her first baby, my grandchild. And that I believe that she's had certain shifts about parenting and motherhood and even the relationship that she has with her mother. So without further ado, I introduce my beautiful daughter-in-law, April Kritzer. Thank you so much, April, for being on the show.
Thank you. Hers in the past, but just hearing it now just brings tears to my eyes, and just I think a lot of people can relate to that. Maybe they have their own different stories, but yeah, they can really relate that. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And I know that you can relate to it in many ways, but your story is quite a bit different.
Yeah.
And many of our listeners, they're familiar with your story. But would you just kind of fill in those who don't know the story and kind of recap on that? It's hard to recap, but I'm sure you'll do a good job.
Well, for me, and I think in the past I didn't really get too much into detail, but basically to describe what it was like for me growing up, when I was really little, my sister actually would take care of me because my mom was she's about a 5 or 6 year old age. So meaning she can't think about taking care of children. So what that means is feeding or clothing us or love or support. So all of those things we were basically on our own. She managed to take care of us when we were babies, but it seemed like when we hit about 2, she would just stop. Mm-hmm. And so my sister basically kind of took over as that parent role for me.
And how much older was your sister?
And my sister, she's 10 years older, but she was only about 16 when she started taking care of me at the age of 2. Wow. So you can imagine a 16-year-old trying to take care of such a young child. Actually, I think she was a little bit younger, maybe 14 or something like that.
Yeah, at the ages.
Yeah.
For those of our listeners who were doing the math there, yeah.
But she was just very young and taking care of me and going to school, and she was a child herself.
Yeah.
But she just couldn't. She has just watched. So basically, I have 2 sisters and 1 brother, and she watched them and watched how it's just been so hard on them. So she couldn't just do it to another child. She couldn't see another one of us go through it. So she took on the responsibility that she was going to be my mom. And so she did. And what that means is when she became 16, she would take me on her dates with her. I don't know if they were too happy about that, but she made it very clear that if they wanted to date her, then her baby sister had to come along. And I actually remember those dates. And
you know, it's embarrassing to go on a date when you have to bring a car seat with you. Just kidding.
Yeah, she did it. She had that much love for me. And so when she got older, she just couldn't do it anymore. About that age of 16, 17. She just couldn't do it anymore. And so she chose to leave. And I'll never forget, because the day that she told me she was leaving was the day my older sister got married. Wow. So now I lost my older sister, who, by the way, she got married very, very young. I think she was 17.
Which is it's a very common dynamic when you're in a neglectful or abusive home, to find any way out. And you know, one of those choices is often, you know, getting married at a young age. So that makes total sense.
Yeah, and so she got married really young. And so, you know, it's just we're taking photos and different things like that, and I'm supposed to be smiling. I'm this flower girl, and my sister just told me that she's leaving.
Yeah.
And I'll just can't even imagine what I was so torn.
Yeah.
And just so broken up, and it was a secret, by the way, that she was leaving. So not only was I having to smile for these photos, I knew my sister was leaving, my mom and my grandparents and everyone didn't know. She was just going to secretly leave with her father that night.
Right.
So
was that the beginning of you learning to smile on the outside and cry on the inside? Yeah. Because I remember, you know, all these years ago when we first met, and you were just 16 years old, and it was, will be 13 years in January, I believe. Yeah, January. And you had a exterior presence that, you know, tried to be happy and smile and all that. And I think you probably fooled a lot of people, but I could see the sadness inside. I can see just the despair and a sense of what I would probably call hopelessness. And at that time, you began to reveal to me and to Dustin, who was your boyfriend at the time, now your husband, my son, what was going on. And at that time, there was a great deal of abuse going on. So not just the neglect, but you had revealed and just really had gone to court regarding a stepfather who had sexually abused you. And then your mother had actually chosen the stepfather over you. Yeah. And there were also other stepfathers who had also abused you. Your mother had been married many, many times. And as a result, you know, you were constantly being put into dangerous situations with these men that were not very integrous. And your mother, did not protect you. So it's like not only do you have the initial abuse from the stepfather who's abusing you, but you have the secondary abuse from a mother who's not protecting you.
Right.
And you even had reason to believe that she knew exactly what was going on. I mean, even after the court, and he was found guilty, and she still had a relationship with him. So that's a lot to deal with. That's a lot to deal with.
Yeah.
How do you relate to that? I mean, you're an adult, a young adult woman, you're pregnant with your first child, and having had grown up with a mom who was just completely unavailable emotionally and physically, more than neglectful, but actually perpetrated hurt upon you in many ways. And even, as an adult, I know that you've confronted her, and your sisters have confronted her, and she swears that she has no memories of the past, and she thought you all had just perfect childhoods, and she thought that these stepfathers were, actually there to help support you and all of that. So, it's one thing to have an experience, and then, someone's like, yes, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, but it's a totally another thing to have an experience like you have had, and have, in this case, your mom saying, oh, that never happened. That didn't happen. How do you deal with something like that? What do you do with that?
Well, for the longest time, I really didn't understand it. And so as a young adult, I went through many years of depression, just thinking something was wrong with me, because if my mom didn't love me, there must be something wrong with me, because I would look around at these mothers that would just embrace their children and kiss them and I love you, and I never got that at all. Mm-hmm. And more than that, it was just this blame game that she would play with me, that it was my fault. Her response to after the sexual abuse was, he didn't murder you, so what's the big deal? Like, she didn't get that to me was worse than murder. And not only that she was basically murdering my soul. And so for many years, it was just in this depression, and I wanted to blame myself. I wanted to blame her, but it was, I wanted her love so bad. I could, and you've seen this from me, I didn't hold anger for her for many years because I wanted her love. I just wanted her to come around and say, oh my gosh, I am so sorry, April, that I put you through this. And I was just waiting for that day and waiting for that day to come, because I thought, it's me. Did you, and it didn't occur to me to ask you this till now, but during that time when you were waiting for your mother's love, did it feel like hindsight that you were actually keeping yourself at a younger age, like you couldn't really mature because you're waiting for your mother to love you, so it's like you're still at like a childhood and adolescent maturity level, so it's like your life couldn't really even happen, so it's like you're doing all these things in your life to try to make it move forward in relationship, career, all these things that a young adult woman desires, and nothing was happening. And it was because you were still waiting for your mother's love and approval, waiting for her to finally be a mother, so you had to keep yourself young in order for that to happen. And also it's just feeling like I missed a childhood too, and that was another piece of that, because it's just like I had my sister left at 5. I had all these abusive men on top of me, physical abuse, going to school. I was responsible for getting myself to school, to get myself dressed, how to figure out how I was going to eat, just all these stresses that I lost my childhood in the sense of play and having friends and different things like that. So as an adult, it was waiting for her love, and then it was also feeling like I missed out on something. So just waiting for something to make me feel complete, to make me feel like I could be an adult. So that's head on. And so for years, I just went through this zombie. Zombie. And when I say zombie, because it was like I was a shell. I mean, that's it. I couldn't respond to anything. I couldn't communicate. I wasn't present. So if any of you have ever seen the movie Click, with Adam Sandler, where he decides he has this remote and he fast forwards through time, he's there, but he's not there because he chooses to not physically be there. That was me. So it was just this body with nothing in it.
Yeah.
And so you guys have heard me talk about, going to Brian Katie's school a lot, and how that transformed me, and how basically I chose to reboot, start over, and then at that point I could choose who I wanted to be, and still, in this place of not knowing where I stood with my mom. Of course I chose all of this for myself, but it was still, there was this pain there with my mom, and so for about a year and a half I didn't talk to her at all. Because I realized I never felt angry at her, ever. And I realized I just needed to feel that anger, to really get in depth with that.
What's the difference between, to you, anger and blame? Because you said earlier that, you were going back and forth between blaming yourself for the abuse, which is very common, and the reason that a child or even a young adult blames themselves for something bad that happened, particularly abuse, is because if you blame yourself then and you're like, oh, I did something wrong, I was bad, I was this, I was that, at least there's a sense of control. I did it. So if I did it, then I can do something else and protect myself. That's why children blame themselves. It's actually a survival dynamic. So you mentioned that there was a long time that you went back and forth between blaming yourself, blaming her, but never felt angry, and you realized that part of the healing was to actually allow this anger to come out. So what is the difference to you?
Well, the anger that I felt, it was different because it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't like blaming. Like, I didn't blame her for the anger I was feeling, but I just knew I had to go through the experience of what my childhood was, what my experience was, what my story was. So it wasn't like I felt like any hatred or any energy towards her. It was more of what happened to me. So it wasn't like I was angry at the person. It was more of what took place.
Right. So almost like steam coming up. So like it's like if you boil a pot of water and you put the top on it, so it's building up all that pressure. And when you just release the top, then the pressure, the steam starts coming out, and that might be compared to, or good metaphor for anger. Would you say that that's true?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing about anger, because a lot of people, especially women, are afraid of their anger because they feel if they allow themselves to feel angry that they'll actually get out of control. They'll do something they'll regret. They won't fit into their ideal image of how a lady or a woman should be. They'll feel that there might be consequences, disapproval. Somebody might, take their love away from them. There's a whole bunch of conditions. There's a whole bunch of perceived consequences on feeling angry. But really, anger, it's really a beautiful emotion because it is that steam letting off. I remember when I never felt anger either. I think there was a lot of other stuff that I felt, but anger was something that I never allowed myself to feel. And when I was in my late 20s, I had about 26, somewhere around there, and I had a boyfriend cheat on me publicly, and it was a bit of a scandal. Now I can laugh at it. It's really quite a funny story, but at the time I was devastated. I mean, just really devastated. And my old pattern was to just, blame myself and want to do something to make it better and not really, take it for what it was. So I was tired of that. I was tired of that pattern. I went over to my girlfriend's house at like 3 a.m. after I found out this whole big scenario happened, and it was, and I said to her and her sister, I said, I want to feel angry. I just wanted to let the anger out. Well, they spent the next 3 or 4 hours revving me up. So not only did I feel angry that night and the next day, I literally experienced anger for an entire year. Yeah. And somehow, even at that time, I knew that it was a good thing because I had suppressed it before. And now I'll admit I had fantasies. We actually volunteered at the same crisis center, and I will admit that I had fantasies of picking up the 5-pound stapler and smashing it through his head whenever I saw him, but I never did it. I never did it. I think I might have told him one time that I wanted to do, but I never did it. And so the reason that I'm sharing that now is because I learned to trust my anger. I began to realize, oh, this is a healthy emotion, and I need to express this. And there was a time I thought, well, is it ever going to be done? I mean, am I going to be angry forever? Because I saw no end to it. But when it was done, it was done. And the most interesting thing about that I didn't expect was, once I had a full range of emotion, of being able to express emotion, including anger, then suddenly, as the years went by, it was more and more rare for me to feel anger. So I went for a whole lifetime, 20-something years, without feeling anger. I went through this year, just felt this anger. And God bless him, because what a gift he was to me, because he was in my life and helped me to create the situation where I got to be angry. So, it was a blessing. I mean, if we had a sacred contract, I think that was it. Well done. On both our parts, and I'm sure I helped fulfill things in him too. And maybe they were equally not as nice. I don't know, but so after that point, I discovered that I really wasn't angry very often, and now I can't remember the last time I've gotten angry. It just doesn't exist, and not because I suppress it, but because I've evolved to the state where I have full access over all my emotions, and I express them at that time. Anger usually happens as a result of, suppression and frustration. If you just allow yourself to feel emotions and to share them and to communicate, and you take responsibility for your life in every way without blaming or shaming yourself, but just literally being responsible for everything that happens in your life, and this is truly the personal power that I speak about, then really there's nothing ever to get angry about. Yeah. So you had this experience with anger, and what did you do with it when you were feeling this?
A lot of it was just going through the emotions of, and a lot of my experiences, the sexual abuse, the physical abuse, the neglect, and it went on for so many years, I actually disassociated. And so there were years I don't even remember to this day. I don't remember. Now, as an adult and being older, I realize I purposely blocked that out, because if I could remember it, I wouldn't be here. It was a survival for me. And so for me to just go through that anger of at least the experiences that I did remember, and to just really look at that, look at the pain, and to see how valid it was for me, to see that it was real for me, that I did feel alone, I did feel neglected, I did feel unloved. And actually, it wasn't until recently when we talked, I realized why it was so confusing for me, and because I would have all this confusion between my mom and wanting her love and just having this anger with her. And I realized what it was is when I was sick, when I was really sick, she was the best mom you could ever imagine. She took care of me. She brought me medicine. She stayed with me. She would sleep in my bed with me. She was just very loving. And as soon as I would get better, it would be turned off. Yeah. And so I didn't keep that memory of that.
Right.
Probably just because I think we choose to remember the bad versus the good.
It's a protection.
Yeah.
it's a survival mechanism. So it's like we remember the bad and we focus on the bad so that we can protect ourselves. So it'll be like if you're out in the jungle and there's beautiful butterflies and there's, big hungry bears, you're not going to be thinking about the butterflies. You're going to be thinking about the bears because that's a threat to your survival. It's only after you feel safe that you can start focusing on the butterflies. And so that makes total sense because you had finally gotten to this point in your life where you did feel safe enough to have memories that there were times that your mom was a really good mom. Yeah. And I think this is a very common phenomena. And I think that's what's so confusing, that if somebody's just all bad, then it's easy or easier to cut them off or leave or make decisions that, really protect you. But when you have situations with somebody where, they have been abusive in some ways or neglectful in some ways, but they also have been sweet and kind and loving and caring, what do you do with that? It's really mind-boggling.
Yeah.
It truly is. And like I said, I believe that this is more common than not. And even with my own situation, for years I focused on all the things that my mother, did, I believe, to stop me from living my life. And, it wasn't until I had matured and just accepted her for who she is and truly accepted her that I really saw that there was a greater truth. And the greater truth was, remembering those times that she really was there for me no matter what. And then I realized that even those times that I perceived that she was doing something to me that, wasn't nice or good or whatever, that I realized that they actually came from the same place as her nurturing and cuddling, and that was a place of love.
Yeah.
And the truth is, it's like it's different for your mom, it sounds like. And the truth is that, our parents do the best that they can.
Yeah.
And very often, when there is abuse and neglect, it's because that there's something inside of them that have not healed. And so there's a lot of people out there thinking, I'm sure that, that's not fair. What about the innocent child? And, maybe they were that child, or, maybe they know that child, or maybe the child was abused by, an ex-spouse or something like that. What about the innocent child? And what I believe is that there's on an unconscious level, on a higher level, we are all equally powerful, and our consciousness is equally as developed. And even a child or a baby that comes into this life has full awareness and full approval of what will happen to him or her in this lifetime. So it's like a child's not born thinking like, oh, I'm going to be loved and cared for, and then gets abused. I don't believe it works like that. When this child comes in, they pick their parents, and they pick parents according to the experiences that they need, or something that needs to be fulfilled or completed there, or evolved in some way or another. And so, I believed that whatever I went through on my entire life, on some unconscious level, I chose that. I chose that, and there's a lot of power in that. I've had reactions from people when they hear that. Oh, I would never choose to be abused, and well, that concept just keeps you powerless, because then you feel like something's happening to you, that you're a victim. And as long as you continue to believe that you're a victim, you'll remain a victim, and the universe will conspire to make that show up in your reality. And by the way, many people claim to be survivors of abuse. And the thing that they don't realize, that in order to be or continue to be a survivor, you also have to continue to be a victim. Mm-hmm. And so it locks you into that very dynamic that has created a lifetime of limitations.
For sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So there was a point where after this year and a half that you did reconnect with your mom. Why did you choose that?
After I went through that period of a year and a half, I really was able to look at myself, and I was really at this point able to just see all the pain I'd brought onto myself, that I was abusing myself, that I was calling myself stupid, I was separating myself out. I just saw all these things that it was like I was trying to blame her for, or other people, but mostly her, and saw that it was really me, that I was neglecting myself, I was abusing myself. And once I decided to completely cut that off, chose to do something different, chose to see what amazing woman I am and how strong I am, and look at everything that I've achieved, everything that I've succeeded in life, and more than that, just the person I am. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't really necessarily about the things that I've done, but just the person I was. And once I was able to see that, then I was able to see her, and I was able to look at her from a different perspective. I was able to look at my mom as not a mom, but just as a person. Once I was able to do that, I really saw she's in this 5-year-old, 6-year-old age that she's stuck in. And thinking about it, if I was 5 or 6, would I be raising children? No. Would I know how to feed them or take care of them? No. Would I know how to be in relationships with other men or different things like that? Not so much. And so looking at her and her behavior and how she was by herself, then I could see for myself what that was like for her. And once I was able to step in her shoes and see that from their perspective, it also didn't make everything that she'd ever done to me or all the experiences okay, but I was able to understand her. Once I was able to understand her, then I couldn't put her in that mother role anymore. Mm-hmm. I stepped her out of that role. And so I did talk to her, and there was a lot of communication back and forth before we even really had a relationship. I did send some guidelines for her, and I made it very clear what kind of relationship I wanted, because looking at that 5 or 6-year-old, I knew it had to be light. It couldn't be that mother role. Right. And so I talked to her about the different things that I saw, and without blame or anger, but just talking to her on what I saw, what kind of relationship we could have. And my mom at this point, she was heartbroken that I didn't talk to her for 1.5 years, and that helped me realize too, like you said, that she really did love me. She loved me as much as her heart and her capability was able to, but she did, and she felt very hurt. And so to just even have me in her life, she was able to accept what I was saying to her. Yeah. And so to this day, we still have a relationship. Is it different? Yes. It's very simple. Yeah. And it works.
So I know there's a lot of people out there thinking, what were those guidelines? Do you remember what those guidelines are?
The biggest one was she's not allowed to disrespect me in any way. Mm-hmm. A lot of times my mom would put me down. I don't think she necessarily was trying to, but, she would just make comments like things that I was doing she didn't think were very smart, or she just got very personal into what my decisions were. And just a lot of it was just inappropriate. Yeah. And then also going to my family, to my husband, and she just had all this anger because she couldn't put in that mother role, so she was jealous of anyone that was close to me. So anyone that was close to me, she was bitter towards, and she would make negative remarks about them, so she would feel like she was a better mom. Yeah. And so the boundary was she wasn't allowed to disrespect any of my friends or family or myself. And the other part of it is just that we keep a light relationship, that I wouldn't hold her to anything, a big, just into that mother role that she would have to do anything. I wouldn't put
like a mother.
Yeah, she would just be a friend.
Yeah. So I hear you saying that you let her go of bondage, so to speak, because we do
Right.
bond people. I mean, we have expectations that people should show up a certain way depending on the role that we believe they should play or need to play in our lives. And so we're holding them to some kind of emotional bondage. And so what I'm hearing you saying is that you released your mom from this bondage by owning your own power, taking care of your needs, and no longer expecting your mother to give you a sense of power through her eyes or to meet any of your emotional needs.
Right.
Yeah. So then the other question I'm imagining that people might be thinking is, well, why would you even want to have a relationship with her if she couldn't, be a mother? Why would you even want to have a casual relationship with her?
And I thought about that too, especially after the year and a half. I wasn't sure if at one point, I was planning on just never talking to her again.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, just looking at that, that was not something I really wanted. I don't like to hold any judgments or have, and a lot of it, I guess, has to come back to my grandparents and the grandparents before that. I just saw this bitterness between the mother and daughter, and I didn't want to have the same pattern. So even if it was just going to be very, very, very simple,
yes,
to me that was more important than any bitterness or holding any anger or hate or anything.
Yeah.
I chose for myself that's not something I wanted, but I also let go of if she wasn't capable, because I also knew I couldn't compromise myself, because I really got to that point, because she would step on me, because she would just get so hurt, and she would be in this 5-6-year-old age, and she felt hurt and betrayed, so to her it was, well, I need to hurt you then.
right,
And so I got to this place I had to protect myself, but I also knew clear intention of what I wanted, and just made that clear to her.
Yeah.
And if she was going to say, I'm sorry, I can't do that, then I was ready to walk away.
Or demonstrate that she couldn't do that.
Right.
Yeah, so she was kind of like on probation, right?
Right.
And still is, because that boundary is in place and it can't be stepped over.
Right.
And there's no leeway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also looking at me having a child now, that really has opened my eyes on the sense of what I want to give him, what kind of mom I want to be, and it really has opened my eyes on obviously every parent makes mistakes, and your kids are going to be unhappy with some of your choices and different things like that. There is no such thing as a perfect mom, but just realizing how much love and goes into that, no matter what.
Yeah. And it's also true that energy is passed on. So, you bring in a child into a family where there's disharmony or friction or distrust or any kind of emotions or energy that's out of alignment, and that child perceives that, even if they don't know it, it affects them, because we're all connected. We're all connected. So you could, pretend to have, a great relationship with your mother or various people in your life. But if there's really disharmony there, that child is affected by it in ways that we cannot even comprehend. We can't even comprehend. But it's there. It's there. Yeah.
And I didn't want to bring my son into that.
Yeah.
I wanted it to stop.
Yeah. Good job.
Thanks.
Good job. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. You're awesome. Thank you for sharing. I know you've helped a lot of people by sharing your story. Thank you. So it's true that the energy that we experience between ourselves and others doesn't just affect that relationship. It affects everyone and everything around us. Many of us are on this path, this journey of helping to facilitate a new earth into being, helping to awaken middle of this planet hoping and having great faith that one day soon this planet will be one of peace and harmony. And it really begins with us. We can't change what's happening out in the world. We can't change what's happening on the other side of the globe. But we can and must look at our own relationships and heal those. That is the only thing that we really have the ability to change as far as relationships go. You can't change the relationships between other people. You can't change the relationships between countries. You can't change the relationships between anything that you are not personally relating to. And having said that, the only thing that you can really change is yourself. You can't change the other person. Certainly you can set boundaries and guidelines like April did, but it's up to the other person to agree to those boundaries, to those guidelines. And certainly you can move to a place of total unconditional acceptance towards another, as I did with my mom. But that doesn't mean the other person is going to change. But somehow in doing that, the relationship does change. And even if it doesn't, you're okay with it. This all comes from this place of unconditional self-love and acceptance. Without that, the rest is just conceptualization, just mind masturbation. To truly heal other relationships, to truly have harmony in your life, it starts with you. And whatever you give to others must be an overflow of that self-love and that self-acceptance. And whatever you think that is, it is so much more. I have a great article on my website, and it is about healing or transforming challenging relationships. So if you go to my website at nanice.com, Nanice.com, and click on the top link that says Article Shows and More. Scroll down and just look for the article that says Transforming, I think it's Challenging Relationships. If you can't find it, just email me and I'll send you the link. And it will definitely enrich this conversation that we've been having today. You have the power to change your life. You have the complete power to make your life everything that you dream possible. Again, please visit me at Nanice.com. Let me know your thoughts, ideas, download free songs. There's a free book download. There's an infinite amount of articles on all sorts of things and lots of resources. Till next week, you have been listening to Chai with Nanice.
Thank you for having Chai with Nanice. Please go to www.nanice.com for great free stuff that will empower you to live your best possible life. Free books, articles, shows, meditation audios, and so much more at Nanice.com. That's Nanice.com. Nanice's books are also available in all major bookstores and Amazon. Check out The Infinite Power of You, Even Gandhi Got Hungry and Buddha Got Mad, Zest Point, Lip Prints, and many others by Nanice Ellis. To find out about one-on-one coaching and how Nanice can personally coach you to experience your best life possible, please email mybestlife@nanice.com.
If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And please join me on my website at nanice.com. That's Nanice.com. Thank you.